listener production.
Hey, it's Antoinette Lattouf here with the Weekend Briefing, and my guest today is Eliza Hull, who is one of the most impressive women I've had the pleasure of meeting. She's a musician, an author, a disability advocate, and in recent months she's been using all of those many skills to help Australians have better conversations with children about disability, but also to draw attention to what it would be like for people with existing disability in Gaza, let alone all the acquired disabilities because of the constant bombardment. In this chat, she's passionate, she's vulnerable, and an absolute delight to get to know. Later in the show, we bring you the weekend list, and that is where we give you pointers on what to watch and see and do and eat and everything in between. But first, here's Eliza Hull. Eliza Hull, welcome to the Weekend Briefing.
Thank you for having me.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about. I don't know where to start. So I'll probably begin with your story as a child, what that was like, and when you realised that music was your calling.
Well, those two things happened right at the same time. I was 5 years old and I was walking down the school hall and a teacher said that one of the students had pulled out of the local Eisteddfod and wondered if I wanted to have a go at singing. And it was, it felt like a very meant-to-be moment. And I'll never forget her face when I started to sing, and she said, yes, this is great. And so I won a gold medal that year, and it was also the time that I started to fall over at school. So when I was 5, most days I would fall over. And so my mum and dad were really concerned and took me to the Royal Children's Hospital, lots of medical appointments, a lot of speaking about me. And it meant that, as a 5-year-old, there was a lot of confusion. I didn't really know why this was happening or what was happening. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I was, officially diagnosed with a disability called Charcot-Marie tooth.
And so this was causing you to fall over.
Yeah.
So this is not just, she's a little bit clumsy. It took 2 years to realise. Is it a neurological disability? I
can't, there's things that don't add up. Like, I guess when you think about when you're 5, you don't remember everything. But I very vividly remember the rocks in the pathways at my school, because every time I'd fall over, they'd actually get stuck into my knees. That's how bad those falls were. And so that's a very, vivid memory for me. I guess that was the first symptom that came about. But then also, because of the way I began to change the way I walked, I grew, kind of balls on the side of my feet because of the way that I was walking. I was rolling over on my feet. And so that was when I had my first surgery. And at that time I was a wheelchair user. And the doctor actually said to me I would never do that surgery again. It was actually a mistake. So I was, that was lucky.
What do you mean that the surgery was a mistake?
He just said he wouldn't treat my disability in that way, that it didn't, the results were not what he expected. And so it actually, made the symptoms progressively worse. So then I had other surgery that would, try and rectify the way that I walked. And so I had the kind of tendons in my feet were wrapped around the other way so that I would walk, still differently, but potentially it would cause less pain. I'm not sure whether any of the surgeries did anything to rectify my disability. And in fact, I think it caused a lot of muscle weakness, which still today affects me in the way, I still walk very differently and I still fall over a lot. If there's anything on the floor in my house, even if the rug on the floor is slightly curved, it's a definite fall is going to happen.
What's your mobility? Obviously, you're talking about still falling, but do you use any mobility aids? What have you done to manage mobility with your disability?
I love to move, so I love to exercise. I, even do boxing out the back in our studio with my partner. And I have, used a walking stick just this year. I broke my leg. I was going down a water slide with my child, and because of my disability, because there's so much weakness in my legs, I have, are prone to breaks. And just by going down a water slide, I broke my leg. And so that, I guess, caused me, to change the way that I walked even more so. And I relied more on the NDIS and support services and a walking stick. I think now I'm hoping that I want to get a mobility scooter. I think that is where I'm headed, because it'd be so fun. And also just, I think, for a long time, there's been this fear of hiding my disability and stigma around, using mobility aids. But now, we have so much representation. And last year I spent 5 weeks in England with an incredible singer-songwriter who is very cool. And her name is Ruth Lyon. And she uses a mobility scooter. And I think just having that representation and just, people that you can connect with and see that, it's not something to be feared. And in fact, a mobility scooter is just a way to get around. And so that's where I think I'll be moving to soon.
So as you were navigating your disability and figuring out ways to live with it as a child and some surgeries that perhaps shouldn't have happened, were you still singing, learning instruments? What was your music journey like at that time? And do you think music helped on that journey with your disability?
Absolutely. I think because, I have been quite insecure as a child growing up with feeling just so different. And, when you are a child, you just so badly want to fit in. You want people to accept you. And I think that's for any child. When you have a disability and you do stand out, like I was, in summer wearing pants to school because I have legs that look a little bit differently. They're very, because I have not much muscle in my legs, and I also were using splints at the time to help me walk. I would just wear pants even in 40-degree heat. And so I copped a bit of bullying. I had one particular time as a teenager, a student walk behind me, mimicking the way that I walked, and even my good friends laughing and pointing. And I'll never forget going into the school's principal's office and just like hysterically crying and just feeling so isolated and alone and different. And I think music was the escape. In those 40-degree days, I would just go and retreat in the music room and belt out all my feelings, and all the pain would come out. And that's where I really started to write my first songs when I was about 14.
I can still hear pain in your voice when you talk about that experience. Did it never stop hurting?
That particular experience has never left me. It was awful. And I think, that particular student, that affected me obviously because somebody was mimicking me and making noises and pretending to be the way that I walked, pretending to be me, and saying that disability was a bad thing, and making me feel inadequate. But I think the most hurtful part of it was my friends that laughed, the ones that I thought were strong enough to be on my side.
In addition to writing music, you've continued to do a lot of things that perhaps you were, not perhaps you were told not to, you were told not to outright, like becoming a mother. What has motherhood been like for you?
Life-changing. Hard. For anybody, it's hard, isn't it? It's a complete ride, a complete shift in identity. But I think fulfilling in ways that I never expected, and also really showed my strength through it. So when I decided that I wanted to be a parent, I went to my neurologist who I had been going to for a really long time. And he told me that he didn't think that I could be a mother. He didn't think that I could manage. He was worried about the falling over. And I think when I really look at the core of what he was saying is he didn't want me to have a child like me. I have a 50% chance of passing on my disability. And there is a lot of stigma around that, around genetic testing and passing on disability. And so even before I wanted to have children, he was constantly saying that I should go through genetic testing and find out the exact type of my disability to be able to then figure out if I was going to pass it on.
Did you do that? Did you do the testing?
I did do the testing not to see if my child was going to have my disability, but just to find out what type of CMT that I had, and I still haven't been able to find out that. I could test my children now, but that is a very invasive test. So when I was a child, when I was tested for my disability, you have actually electric shocks that go through your body to test your nervous system. Even my sister had to have that. She doesn't have a disability, but just to test if she was a carrier. And it's a very painful procedure, and I just wouldn't do that to my children.
How does it feel as, on the one hand, you've said, especially as a child, you so desperately want to be like everybody else. But then as an adult, in so many ways, your disability has been what drives you. It informs your music. We're going to talk about your advocacy, children's book you've written. The very idea of having a test to see if your child is going to have the same disability, if that test was conclusive, would it alter whether you had a child or terminated a pregnancy? And I'm sorry if you think this is, because essentially that's the subtext of what the doctor was saying, right? Figure out if you can stop this.
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, as a child and as a teenager, when you start to dream up what your life is going to look like, you start to imagine having children, I remember thinking, gosh, like that, I can't do that. I can't have a child and then them start to fall over at school, them to go through pain, surgery, medical procedures, stigma, discrimination, living in an inaccessible world. So I used to think that I would feel a lot of guilt if that happened. But as I grew into who I am today and somebody that speaks really openly and proudly about having a disability, I just decided that I was actually really the only person that had that knowledge of what it was to have a disability like mine. And I chose yes, because I've had a great life, and to me, my disability is so much a part of who I am in every way. It's my personality, it's the way that I sing, the way that I express myself. And the thing that I felt was actually holding me back is now the thing that's really, helping me step forward and helping me speak my truth and live an authentic life.
And that discrimination you faced becoming a parent with a disability also led to you editing a book, You've Got This, which is an anthology, is that how you would describe it, of experiences of parents with disability. You also wrote a children's book, which my kids love. It's called Come Over to My House. Why is it important to teach parents or children how to have conversations around disability? Because I guess a lot of that sort of cruelty and unfiltered language starts at a really young age.
I remember it was during COVID. We had to line up to get into the kindergarten because we were socially distancing, and there was a child that came up to my daughter and I and was talking to their mother and said, "What's wrong with her? Why does she walk like that?" And the mother and I had conversations previously, just only a week ago, about how I have a disability and how, I do disability advocacy and how I've had my disability since I was 5. And she actually almost went into like a freeze and said she's been in an accident. Right, okay. It made me realise that it's not her fault, actually. It's just because we haven't had enough conversations about how disability is not a deficit. Disability is not something to be feared. And that disability is not a bad word. That actually disability is part of our world, and it's a beautiful part. And that the more conversations that we have about disability in our homes, I feel like it just sets up children to understand that it's just part of being human.
So going back to that conversation, what would you have liked if that mother was equipped with the language and the nuance to have that conversation, to say to a child?
Eliza has a disability. She was just sharing that with me a couple of weeks ago. Eliza, would you mind telling my child about your disability? maybe something like that. I guess it's not always up to the person with disability to teach your children. And I think a lot of people with disability get tired of explaining, what their disability is, how it affects them day to day. Some people like to step in and have those conversations. But I think that's why books are so important in the home, because if you have these conversations with your kid in the home and you're having representation of people that are blind, deaf, people that have dwarfism, and you get to have those conversations, I feel like kids will be like, yeah, that's fine, and moving along, have you seen what that deaf mother's wearing in the book? They'll start to talk about other things, and you'll find that they won't really need to pose those questions on people with disability in society.
As you say, carrying sort of the load and explaining all the time can be tiresome, particularly when you're navigating life as a mother and an artist who still doesn't have necessarily accessible spaces in the music industry. But then you're watching, and I've been following your social media, but then you're watching disability en masse live streamed on your phone. And I see you talk about Palestine. Can you tell me why you talk about Palestine, and if you've questioned, or whether you should, or whether you have the energy to, or whether, because I know a lot of people struggle with how much they do or don't do.
For me, I can't turn away. I feel like the moment that I switch off, I'm turning my back, and that's why I want to speak about it. I want to amplify Palestinian voices. I've been speaking to people that are in Palestine right now, speaking to disabled people, and it is tragic and has been deeply affecting me daily. And I feel like everything has changed for me. I see everything through the Palestinian lens. I see even my parenting. When I'm up in the middle of the night, I'm thinking about Palestine. And I'm thinking about people with disability that have lost all supports, are having limbs blown off, amputated without any pain relief. People that have a disability that are reducing their intake of food and water so that they can go to the toilet less because it's too hard to get to the toilet, because it's inaccessible, facing constant demands to move from there to supposed safe spots, to have to navigate a completely inaccessible world where there is rubble, where you don't have your supports, your people in place, and people that are, wheelchair users and don't have their wheelchair, people that have acquired disability, and there is just so many people acquiring disability daily that don't have any pain relief, that don't have water to drink. So I can't turn my back on that. It's a disability rights issue, it's a human rights issue, and it has been deeply affecting me.
Obviously, we're seeing live streamed on our phone so much of the tragedy unfold. You see limbs, as you say, of children blown off, of men, of women. It's easy to forget, though, that there would have been, probably similar to our statistics, 1 in 5 Palestinians who had a disability before. I almost feel those living with a disability, with hearing impairment or loss of vision or mobility issues, like almost as, do you think that perhaps they're not centred in the conversation as much, given, there's so much devastation. Where do you look, and what do you talk about?
Yeah, I guess I have been listening to those stories. There are, many people that are deaf that are saying that they are confused, that they're not getting accessible information, that they are feeling the bombs through vibrations and not knowing where they're coming from. People that have physical disability that are literally being left behind. And so I think that it's important to centre their voices, but also to think about the many people that are acquiring disability. It's not an accident that these people are acquiring disability. This is caused by bombs, by Israel, and it needs to stop. It just needs to stop.
Obviously, as an author and a musician, and knowing how divisive speaking up is about, whether, as you say, this is a disability issue, it's a human rights issue, even though the evidence might be clear and strong, in a context like Australia, it can be fraught. We've seen artists lose gigs. We've seen people have to withdraw from writers' festivals. Have you had to stop and think about how continuing your advocacy may impact your next book deal, your next gig, your next EP?
Of course, I've thought about that, but I don't care. And every time I post about Palestine, I lose followers. But I don't care because I have a conscience and I can't look away. I literally cannot look away every day. And I've had such big feelings that I've not known what to do with. So I've been seeing a therapist. Like, I've needed to unravel what I'm experiencing, because this is the first time that I've seen a live streamed brutality and horror like this unfolding on my phone. I feel privileged in saying that, because I have moments where I can be with my kids and switch off from that. And that feels, I feel powerless at times, but I've also realised that we do have the power as people, actually, and I know that politicians are feeling the pressure. And so I feel like what I can do is not switch off, is raise as much money as I can, which, it was really beautiful to live in a community like Castlemaine, where we came together and created a beautiful music event and raised lots of money for We Are Not Numbers, which is an organisation that gives money to writers in Palestine, which I think stories are more vital than ever to hear on the ground of what people are facing. So all I can do is what I'm one human, but I think that collectively we can change the world, and I truly believe that. So I feel like there's been moments where I've felt powerless, but actually realising that we have a lot of power.
Yeah. Well, art inherently is often very political, and throughout the ages has been used as a reflection of where society is or where society is contending with. We saw Macklemore write that song, Heinz Hall. Have you considered, or do you think what you've witnessed and what you're feeling may influence some of your music moving forward?
It already has, yes. I guess because it is so much of my psyche right now. I've been writing a lot of new music, and one of the songs is somebody that I'm speaking to in Palestine, is their story, and I obviously will be sharing those lyrics and with this particular person. But I feel, really strongly that it's important that we share our stories, and songs are definitely part of that.
Well, you have an EP out that was released in December. When can we expect some of this new music that you're referring to?
Who knows? It's always really hard to say when. Here They Come came out in December, and it's such a record that I'm proud of, because it was the first one that I spoke about having a disability. And one of the songs, Running Underwater, features an incredible dancer. She has one leg.
I love that. I've seen that clip.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Her name is Roya the Destroyer, and she's an incredible performer. And we get to perform that live a lot of times together, which has been really beautiful. And she really embodies the song, because she just moves in ways that is just so incredible, and I guess really pushes up against people's expectations of living with a disability. And so I'm really proud of this record, and, I think it'll be interesting to see where I go next.
Well, I wait with bated breath. I can't wait to see what you do next. Everything you create is beautiful. It's magical. It's raw. And thank you for your honesty and also your empathy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Eliza Hull. Her children's book, Come Over to My House, is one of my kids' favourites. It's available at all good bookstores. Her recent EP, Here They Come, is also available now. And stay tuned for the music she is currently writing about Gaza. It's your favourite time of the weekend. It is Weekend List with Helen Smith, my producer, my Gen Y investigator, my pop culture queen colleague. Helen, what's on your list?
All right, so my first recommendation is a table book, kind of. It looks like a pretty book that you'd have on your...
Like a coffee table.
Coffee table.
Yep.
But it's so good. It's called 4 a.m. Answers to the Conundrums That Keep You Up at Night. Advice from Ask Shameless. So that's Shameless Media. Mm-hmm. And it answers all of these questions that the readers and listeners have sent into Shameless Media. And they have a bunch of different really good writers and authors that respond to the questions. And they're about relationships, friendships, love, career advice. It's those questions that keep you up, and you're just like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I should have done this. What if, like, oh my God. And they talk about.
So do you have it on your coffee table?
I have the audiobook.
Right.
And it's so good because they have all the different authors speaking the parts and voices. So you get a range of voices.
That's nice.
And it's just really well produced as well, the audiobook, because, I mean, they're a podcast.
Yes.
Shameless. But yeah, it's great to have on in the background. I've been listening to it in the shower. I've just been like, oh my God. It gives you all the different perspectives that you might not think of yourself.
Yeah, great.
And it puts you in the shoes of someone else if you've been in that situation as well, especially with friendships.
Yeah.
I think the friendship advice in that book is probably my favourite.
Yeah, and if you so happen to, I don't know, when I'm feeling anxious, I wake up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. I guess it's a good thing to plug into your ears and have a listen. Well, my recommendation is also kind of wellness adjacent. From the advice of a woman I recently met, she says there's something that she has done that really helps her mental health. And she's like, I suggest you do it. It's so easy. So she told me to put an alarm on my phone for the same time every day. And when the alarm goes off, just to stop and to take 3 or 4 deep breaths. She's it's like akin to therapy. Yeah. And she's like, you just stop whatever you're doing and you really take deep breaths, because you probably at that point realise how shallow your breaths are, or how much you're rushing around, or how many things you have on your mind. And so I've set my alarm for 2:32 p.m. because I hate round numbers.
2:32?
Yeah. I just can't do 2:30 or 3 p.m. I've only done it for about a week and I'm really liking it. It just makes me stop and makes me realise that whatever frantic rush I'm in is not that important and can stop for 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. My doctor actually gave me that advice.
Yeah.
They told me I need to do more deep breathing. So.
We all need to do more deep breathing.
So I love that. I'm going to do that too. I think it's a good little reminder.
Yeah, see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, my second recommendation is something to do with you, Antoinette.
Right.
I'm sure the listeners know your podcast, The Antoinettes, and you have a live show coming up. And I couldn't recommend this more because I did go to your opening night of your podcast launch and I got to see you and Azur live in action, having your banter, having your discussions, your disagreements, which I love the disagreements you guys have.
Yeah.
And
she's so funny. To be
she
fair,
is so funny.
Azur Antoinette, my co-host, is so bloody funny.
Like hilarious.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how?
Yeah.
But it really showed the dynamic of you two live. I think it's going to be such a great show. And your podcast, it goes deep into all those conversations. And I'm like, okay, if they're arguing like this in a podcast that's pre-recorded and edited, God, the live version's just going to be better. I'm like, there's no edits there.
Yeah, exactly.
So
we are what we are. So this is just a Sydney live show. We're hoping to get to other cities. And you know what? It was off the back of your weekend list recommendation last week where you were like, look around for affordable tickets, under $30, something you can do. And so we have tickets. We've got some 2-for-1 deals for early birds and we have under $30 tickets for students and concession card holders because we want as many people to come along as possible.
Yeah, make it more affordable, accessible. No, that's great. So I'm very looking forward to that one.
My second recommendation is spicy chicken wings. I love deep fried wings, but they are quite unhealthy to eat. But I also don't like fried.
So add a bit of spice, healthy?
Well, wait. I don't like to fry things because it's unhealthy, but also because oil splatters everywhere and I hate cleaning it up.
Right.
So these taste like fried chicken wings, but they're in the oven. And the key is, so I get oil, salt, Cajun and paprika and just like very generously mash it, rub it into the chicken wings. And then I put it in the oven and I essentially nuke them at like 220 to 230. I pull them out and by that point they're quite cooked and then I will turn the grill on. And so they become quite crunchy tasting and spicy, but without the fried part.
Right. Okay.
And they are absolute crowd pleasers. I actually got the recipe from my Mexican sister-in-law made it one time and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And she's like, we do it all the time. This is my recipe. And so, spicy chicken wings that are not fried but taste fried.
I love that. I love the crispy crunch that you get.
Oh, it's absolutely delicious and it's guilt-free.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, that is it for this week. Thanks so much for being with us and tuning in. It's always a pleasure. If you want more of the Weekend Briefing, you can find us on the Listener app. Download the Listener app in the App Store. Follow us there. Otherwise,
follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. And why not give us a rating and a review for this chat with Eliza Hull. And if you have the time, if you're feeling generous, you can rate and review every episode. We'll be back Monday morning where the team will have the latest headlines straight to your headphones along with some interesting interviews. Stay safe, everyone. Catch you next week.
Listener.